tells me something about humans and glory. We were never created to have glory for ourselves. We were always created to give glory. Just a disclaimer, I am wearing a top. Boob tubes are the way forward currently, okay? Hello and welcome to another video, guys. Thank you so much for being here. This is my first video of 2023 and I just want to say Happy New Year, sis! Today's video, as I thought this is the first video of 2023, what do I want it to be about? I wanted this video to be the one thing, or at least about the one thing that I most definitely am leaving back in 2022, baby. And that is no more seeking human validation. I am done with that, okay? That creeper has long left the building and I am happy to kiss her bye-bye. So let's talk about the 3 signs that may show you that you are dealing with seeking human validation. Now, why would you even want to nip this in a bud, right? And mostly because, and I'm going to probably repeat this again and again and again at every point, but it's mostly because seeking human validation is way too fleeting. You don't want to live your life on the basis of the opinions of others or pleasing others. It's long. But also the Bible tells us that life like that is not a strong foundation. It's like building a house on sand. As I was in Esther, I started to really see this whole human validation situation issue in the story of Haman. Now, Haman is the villain of the story of Esther, and usually when we're reading the book of Esther, because she's the star of the show, she's all that we are usually focused on, right? Let me give you some context of the story of Esther for my sisters that have not yet read it. I would really encourage you to read it though, it's so good. But Esther is a Jewish young lady who is an orphan who's taken care of by her uncle Mordecai. There's a king at the time who is married to Queen Vashti. Now, Queen Vashti disobeys the king and he gets upset, and his nobles and officials advise him to let go of Queen Vashti lest other women take example from her and start becoming disobedient, basically. He follows these orders and gets rid of Queen Vashti. Now, he is on a quest to replace the queen, and so his efforts in doing that results in getting so many different virgins to come into his castle to then start their process of being beautified, okay? So Queen Esther now is selected to be queen. She has actually hidden her identity of being Jewish from the king. And so one day now, Haman, who is the villain of this story, and Haman is basically the king's right-hand man, he basically, wherever he goes, people worship him. Or not worship him, but they respect him, okay? So they either arise, so they get up and show their respect, or they get down low and show their respect that way. And so he realizes that there's this one man by the king's gate called Mordecai who never bows down or rises when he sees him. So he gets really upset. And from him being upset one day, he actually asked the king to issue a decree that all the existing Jews will be wiped out, basically will be murdered. And the king basically signs this decree. And then Mordecai, so Queen Esther's uncle, hears of this decree because everyone at this point has heard. So Mordecai goes to Queen Esther and is like, look at what your hubby has just signed. Like, this is crazy. You got to go and speak to him. And Queen Esther is like, oh my gosh, I can't go to speak to him because everyone knows that the rule is that unless the king has ordered you to come into his presence, you cannot just show up. You can't just turn up. Queen Esther then says, do you know what though? I'm I'm gonna do it, and if I die, then I guess that's it really. So she then goes into the king's presence, and the king is like, what is it? What do you want? What is it that you need? And she's like, if it favors you, yourself and Haman, the waste man joker Haman, is invited to dinner at my place. She says my place as in like it's the same castle, but it's like her section of the castle. So he's like, of course, like dinner. I never say no to food. So he then takes Haman to dinner at Queen Esther's section of the castle. Okay, the place at which we're picking up is actually Esther chapter 5 verses 9 to 14. It says, Haman went out that day happy and in high spirits. But when he saw Mordecai at the king's gate and observed that he neither rose nor showed fear in his presence, he was filled with rage against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home. Calling together his friends and Zeresh, his wife, Haman boasted to them about his vast wealth, his many sons, and all the ways the king had honored him, and how he had elevated him above the other nobles and officials. And that's not all, Haman added. I'm the only person Queen Esther invited to accompany the king to the banquet she gave, and she has invited me along with the king tomorrow. But all this gives me no satisfaction as long as I see that Jew Mordecai sitting at the king's gate. His wife Zeresh and all his friends said to him, have a pole set up, reaching to a height of 50 cubits, and ask the king in the morning to have Mordecai impaled on it. Then go with the king to the banquet and enjoy yourself. This suggestion delighted Haman, and he had the pole set up. So that is the basis of this entire video. And so sis, if you wanted to know whether your life displays signs that you are perhaps seeking human validation as opposed to Jesus's validation, then let's get into it. So sign number one that perhaps you are looking for human validation is this, that you are experiencing joy and rage. Now this comes from verse 9. This story just shows us how crazy or how toxic human validation is. Because imagine Haman is being honored by Queen Esther. He is the only one that is invited to Queen Esther's dinner, intimate dinner with her husband, and he is invited to be a third wheel. Like, how much is this guy honored by the royals? But this one man, the sight of this one man, the movements of this one man, the decisions of this one man can affect him to that degree. That is so toxic, because what that is doing is that it's stripping him from actually recognizing how blessed he truly is. And so sis, if you feel like this is you, if you feel like, okay, the line between joy and rage for me are kind of blurred, like I'm in between both extremes so easily, then perhaps dive deep into that feeling of rage. Or when I say dive deep into it, I don't mean like act on it, I mean reflect on it. Reflect on why it is that you're feeling the way you're feeling, and lo and behold, before you even realize it, like, you will see that actually it's attached to some kind of human validation. Because naturally we all feel like we need validation, but actually our validation comes from the Lord. So the next point is, or the next sign is, that you are offended when you're not recognized. And that's from verse 13. It says, but all this gives me no satisfaction as long as I see that Jew Mordecai sitting at the gate. This tells me something about humans and glory. We were never created to have glory for ourselves. We were always created to give glory. Our life should be giving glory to our Creator. Glory is much like pride. Pride is basically believing that you are above somebody else. And so the reason why Haman is so offended that Mordecai will not bow down or rise to him is because it's affecting his pride. It's really touching his ego. And that's because he wants Mordecai to understand that he is higher than Mordecai. Does that make sense? It's a matter of like a battle of who has more importance. And that's why we were never created for glory, because we are never supposed to be higher than one another. We are all equals, if that makes sense. Like in the eyes of God, we are all equals, whether rich or poor, whether male or female, as the scripture says. The bottom line is that we are constantly looking to be acknowledged for what we do, right? And that was Haman's story. He wanted to be acknowledged as the king's right-hand man, and Mordecai wasn't giving him the acknowledgement, which then affected his pride, which then is a question of getting glory, right? Or him not getting glory from Mordecai. If you find yourself kind of relating to Haman in this story, where you feel like you're not being recognized and you're not being acknowledged for what you're doing and for your efforts, perhaps at work, perhaps in your family, and you feel like you can identify with his emotions a little bit, then this is a great sign to say that actually perhaps you're leaning more towards seeking human validation, and actually to reposition yourself back into the eyes of the gospel, in the eyes of accepting Jesus's validation over our lives instead of human validation. The point is that us humans cannot satisfy each other in that sense, and only the Lord can. So the last point is this. The third sign of whether or not you are seeking human validation is that you find yourself being more aware of what you do not have than all that you do have. The fact that you're watching this video tells me that you have access to either a phone or a laptop or a TV for some, and some data or some Wi-Fi. Now that is a place of privilege. And unlike Haman, we want to just acknowledge the Lord for his goodness, because so many people do not have access to this. Sometimes seeking human validation, or at least what I've learned from seeking human validation, is that it really blinds us to all that we do have, because we're going after that one thing that we do not have. This one here is a troublemaker, okay, because gratitude is the thing, okay, the thing that the Lord loves in his people. One of the things that can happen when we're so focused or tunnel visioned on like seeking this person's validation is that we actually become so fogged in our views of what we actually do have, and that is salvation in Jesus, right? If you're watching this video, I'm assuming you believe. And actually sometimes all these things, all these meaningless activities, all these meaningless pursuits can somehow blind us to all that we do have in the Lord. And so this last point, if you feel like you can kind of identify with just losing that essence of thankfulness in your life, then try and find the root of why you feel like you're losing it, because perhaps human validation is at the end of that. So this point here, oh my gosh, I did not realize my hair was so crazy. That is so funny. I did this whole video with my hair so crazy, but it's okay. We move, isn't it? But yeah, this point over here is so important, because you do not want to lose touch with what's most important in pursuit of something that's so meaningless, let's be honest. And so if this feels like you, if you feel like you can somewhat attach yourselves to those emotions, or perhaps losing that sense of thankfulness, then sis, nip it in the bud. That's all I've got to say. Just nip it in the bud. Just cast your sights on what actually matters, and that is your relationship with the Lord, your salvation. The word says to sort out your salvation with fear and trembling, meaning that like, This is weighty stuff. So that will be it for our video today. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. I hope that you are somewhat encouraged also. We are not done. As per usual, we will continue our conversation in the comment section down below. So let me know in the comment section down below if you have ever walked through the journey of overcoming this aspect of seeking human validation. If so, what were your lessons from your journey of overcoming seeking human validation? So I will see you in the comment section down below, but I will also see you in the next video. Bye.